right, we're gonna start. I'm Ira Kirschenbaum. I am the editor of the Journal of Orthopedic Experience and Innovation, otherwise known as Joey. Um, we have the first of our seminar series. This one being called Lessons I Learned the Hard Way in My Career. I have to thank Lisa Canada, who came up with that title and uses it in her speed tutoring at all these meetings and the academy. I'd like to introduce our faculty. I'm just going to go from the top, the way I see it. Bruce, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us where you've been, what you do, and why do you have such a long beard right now? Yeah.
Thanks, Ira.
Okay.
I'm Bruce Gomberg. I'm an arthroplasty surgeon, slowing down in my career, and the director of the main orthopedic review, an orthopedic board review course. I'm also on Joey editorial board. I guess I have to disclose that.
Yeah.
And I was, believe it or not, and I'm sure he doesn't remember, a medical student that once did research with Dr. Warner at the University of Pittsburgh.
No, I don't remember. Sorry.
I know.
I'm amazed Bruce remembers.
I'm amazed too. I mainly worked with Gary Gruen and did some work with him. I did spin off a little bit and do a paper with you way back.
You're younger than me, huh?
You were a youngster.
I was a youngster, or you were younger than me? Which is it?
You were a youngster.
Right.
All right. Well, obviously there wasn't a hard lesson you learned because you're still practicing, Bruce, so it's okay. I'm going to introduce Elizabeth Matzkin, who is at the Brigham. Elizabeth?
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Matzkin. I practice sports medicine at Mass General Brigham in Boston. I am also on this editorial board. I am privileged to work with our residents and fellows, and I'm happy to be here tonight.
Thanks, Liz. Selene Parekh. Selene, tell us where you've been and where you are now, too.
Yeah, thanks, Ira. I'm Selene Parekh. I am a foot and ankle specialist now at Rothman Orthopedic Institute, anchoring their Princeton, New Jersey offices. Before this, just 2 weeks ago, I was in a private academic setting at Duke University, was there for 14 years before heading back to my home state in Jersey. I'm also a board member for Joey, and have loved to see the success Iris had with this and filled a niche, and it's been very successful. So congratulations, and I'm glad to be here tonight.
Great. And also a pleasure to have John J.P. Warner. JP, you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I once had a patient give me a card. On the front of it, it said "has been," and on the back of it, it had a list of all the things he has been. And so I don't know how to introduce myself because I have been a lot of things. Right now, I'm co-chief of the shoulder service. I've already hired my replacement. I'm still hanging around. In addition to my academic roles and everything else, I went to Harvard Business School and spent a lot of time in entrepreneurial endeavors. And that's probably enough for now.
Okay. I want to say that all the faculty are just premium top level surgeons, leaders, managers, innovators in this country and in the world. And if we really push them with some sodium pentothal, they would have to each speak about 24 hours to cover their accomplishments. I really mean that, and really a pleasure to have them here. I'm Ira Kirschenbaum. My day job is I don't have a day job. It's kind of the has-been kind of concept. My day job is I'm the chairman of orthopedics at Bronx Care Orthopedics, which is in the South Bronx, anchoring down the what is the poorest congressional district in the country. We had an idea a few years ago, 3 years ago, myself, Lara Wynn, Beth Best, and a few others to produce the Journal of Orthopedic Experience and Innovation. I will I would like to just show everybody what the journal looks like. You can see that. Many of you know what it looks like. This is our recent article on increased stiffness following total knee. We've covered everything from private equity, which got almost 10,000 views, which is really absolutely remarkable for a single article in an orthopedic journal. This was like a roadmap by Gary Hirschman and Hector Torres. Charlie DeCook published another article, close to 6,000 views. Our publishing analytics for the last year, we went over 100,000 page views, 71,000 article page views, and almost 50,000 unique visitors. We started on March 14th, the first day of COVID, March 14th, 2020. We figured we weren't going to do anything else. The ORs would be closed. And so we started the journal. The actual idea came up in 2009 because I felt that there was not enough articles related to the experience that surgeons were having, and there wasn't a voice for innovation that can get out rapidly. And I think that those are the two hallmarks of the journal. We're completely open access, no article processing fees, no submission fees, and no charge for reprints. So the way we make money is I work at a hourly hotel. No, the way we make money is through advertising, which works out right. Tonight's topic, lessons I learned the hard way in my career. I'm going to ask Bruce to go first. Bruce, can you share a lesson you learned the hard way in your career? And maybe we could each, the faculty could chip in on whether they've experienced that or whether you're the only one who couldn't handle it.
Maybe, it really took a while to think about some life lessons I learned from my career, but I think there were two. You could pick up however you want that really stand out. Number one is, although I didn't directly learn it the hard way because I just kind of stumbled into it quickly, was I got a great mentor coming right out of training. And as my role in the directorship of the Maine Orthopedic Review, I see a lot of young surgeons who are learning the hard way that they need a mentor. And so one of the biggest things that I just seemed to stumble into was I had a senior partner that was an absolute stellar mentor in every way, in running the business of our department, surgical help, patient care. In every way, he was fabulous. And so I would say that was one of the biggest things that if you don't pick up right away, it's going to be a bumpier road.
So I'd like to interrupt for a second. Of course, we have a very close friend and a guest just came on. One of our. He now knows he's going to be faculty tonight. You didn't know that, Kevin. I'm pulling a Kevin Plancher on Kevin. You are now faculty tonight with us with J.P. Warner, Selene Parekh, Elizabeth Matzkin, and Bruce Gomberg. This is Kevin Plancher. If you don't know him, you're living under a rock. Kevin is a sports and joints and quite a number of things in orthopedics, but is also a master's of public health. Well, you can introduce yourself, Kevin, and is also the head of the Ortho Summit course, which is a must-go-to course. So, Kevin, you want to just say a few words? Because we're going to talk about lessons I learned the hard way in my career.
Well, first I want to say, because I see one of my mentors, so Dr. Warner was my senior resident years ago, so I have to give acknowledgement to Dr. Warner there. And he started early on wanting to do shoulder and really fulfilled that. Great. And Bruce Gomberg, another hat off, if I may, to the Maine Orthopedic, another dear friend. And it goes on with Selene, Dr. Parekh, and Liz Matzkin. So it's a little unfair, but I'm Kevin Plancher. I am honored. Lessons I've learned. I'll listen for a minute, then maybe I can. But I hail from New York City, and the point I would say is anything is possible. So don't allow anyone to say otherwise, and always strive for perfection. And I'm sorry, I'm a baby boomer, so I don't believe in life-work balance. But have a nice day.
All right. Well, I'll leave it up. That was one, Bruce. You learned the hard way that you need to have a mentor, or some have learned the hard way that they don't have a mentor.
Yeah.
Maybe JP, do you have something? I'm going to bounce back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, I'll dovetail a few things together with a little more granularity. I mean, I have a long list, but one of the things I learned at Harvard Business School, a whole section was on authentic leadership development and peeling the layers down of who you are and what people think of you. Remember this: the way you see yourself is not the way other people necessarily see you. And that realization allows you to be more impactful when you deal with people. So be open to criticism. But let me just say, I learned the hard way about the difference between good and bad leadership, and mentors were part of that. In my career, I've had one fantastic mentor. One was really when I was coming out of medical school. That was Mac Evarts, but he was early on in my career. He got me started. But every single one of us gets a break from somebody who helps us at the right moment. Timing is critical. And for me, that was a guy named Jim Herndon. And he really looked after me. Now, by the same token, I learned about what has been called crucibles, the things that challenge you in life, and who's behind you and who's helping you is critical. And I did not have somebody behind me that was very, very supportive at a time when I went through my crucible. And I realized that if I ever wanted to be a mentor and a leader, that's what defines you and differentiates you. Do you look after the people who are looking to you for leadership, or do you look the other way? And that I won't go into the details too much. I'm happy to expand on it, but it was a several-year challenge. And I'll just mention what my good mentor said to me once. He said, "Just remember this: just because you're paranoid doesn't mean people are not really out to get you." And so prepare for the worst, hope for the best, and get someone in your corner. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Hey, JP, that's fantastic advice. And actually, Herndon was a mentor of mine as well. I got a chance to spend some time with him and was a mentor as well. But I want to ask Bruce and JP, both of you guys, because mentorship is so important. You don't always get a chance to pick your mentors, right? I mean, especially when you enter a job and you're in a department and your mentors may be those who are more senior than you. If you're fortunate, you get somebody who's extremely supportive of your career, doesn't feel threatened, and will help to advance your career. But I find that more often than not, that's not the case. So what do you guys do or advise those on this call who are young and starting out to do if they find themselves in that situation?
You want me to mention, and then I'll
yeah, why don't you go, JP?
Sure. So I'll give you guys a reference. There's a wonderful TED Talk by a guy named David Brooks. It's something along the lines of legacy values and resume values. Most of us in our life are building our resumes. When you mentor people, you're building a legacy. The only legacy you will ever have, whether you donate a building or whatever, are your children and the people whose lives you changed, period. Some people grow up to be mature and understand that's their role as leaders, and other people, they keep building their resume until they're ready to go in the grave. All right. So you need to trust your gut that when you come across someone like that, you understand that they could be your mentor. And one of the important things to realize is while we make these critical decisions in our lives about where we'll live, where we'll work, etc., we analyze things. First and foremost, trust your gut about people, and you'll eventually find a mentor that's worth following.
Kevin?
I'd like to take a little different tack, but say it a different way, similar to what JP and Dr. Parekh said. So I think we are not good at, or I was not good as a young person, how to listen. I was working at 500% and not listening. And what JP is saying, I think you need to look around when you see someone and make sure you're really listening, whether it's our patients, whether it's someone that's going to help you or a mentor. And I think sometimes you have to ask for help. I don't know that I did that when I was young. I thought I knew it all. I was very lucky. I went through incredible residency, incredible fellowships, and I probably should have taken a step. And so I believe, misperceived in my younger days, or maybe I was perceived correctly and it wasn't good. And I think as I matured, I realized what JP said. I looked in the mirror and said, is that the same person that I'm seeing that other people are seeing? And so I now have the honor of 15 years of a fellowship, and I think it's just great because I get humbled every day by my fellows. And so I would say listen, really listen. What is the person seeing? And put yourself sometimes in the other person's shoes. Because if you're asking for something and it's not reasonable, maybe you'll realize it's not reasonable, or maybe it is reasonable. But ask. It's okay to ask. And sometimes when they say no, go back, ask again. Because maybe the second time they may change their mind. So,
Elizabeth, you're on, right?
I just got on. Thank you.
Oh, any comments about just on this topic of whether or not on mentors, the value of mentors, and maybe learning the hard way by not getting a mentor?
No, I think, mentors are extremely important. And I think finding mentors for maybe the surgical aspects of your practice, but also mentors for the personal aspects of being an orthopedic surgeon and work-life balance. And maybe Dr. Plancher is not the best mentor for that, but you can still reach out to him.
I love you too, baby.
But I think just finding mentors that have similarities that you want to accomplish, or whether, like I said, in life, and you may have different mentors for different aspects of your life. I mean, I have many male mentors for things, and I have, female mentors for other things.
I'd like to introduce one of our faculty just came on, Vin Dasa, who's a vice chairman and a professor at LSU. Vin, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Vin Dasa. I'm at LSU here in New Orleans, and just thanks, Ira, for putting this together.
Yeah, I think Vin learned the hard way not to go to New Orleans due to the hurricanes and the water levels. That's what he learned the hard way, pretty much. So let's move on to something else. Does any of Selene, do you have some lesson you learned the hard way?
Not necessarily something I learned the hard way, because like JP, I went to business school, and I think a lot of business school teaches you to, unlike medical school where you're really taught to think on your own and just regurgitate information, business school really teaches you to work as a team and really think out of the box and look for solutions. But one of the things that I saw a lot of young faculty members when I was a young faculty member do is this idea that, yes, you're the surgeon, but you're always got the last word, and you've always you can do no wrong. And so you'll be in the operating room and the expletives go flying or the temper goes out of whack, and that'll get you into trouble. I mean, long gone are those days where you could do that. In fact, I've seen I had a pleasure to see Henry Mankin in the OR, who's a phenomenal surgeon in the OR. But back then, as a medical student, I saw, sometimes that temper go, and the things that generation of surgeons did, you can't get away with anymore. And it's really about teamwork. It's really about playing well in the sandbox, empowering others so that you can motivate them to do their job. And you really have to be not only a leader, but a manager in the operating room. And you've got to do it in a very kind way to get people to buy into whatever it is that you're trying to do, so that you can accomplish the care for the patient.
No, I think that's a great point. I mean, one of the things that I was going to bring up was I learned the hard way that I needed to channel my frustrations into plans of correction or changing the environment around me in a positive way, especially when you're in difficult hospital situations and sometimes things don't go your way. It's better to learn to be part of the solution. There was always a line in the 60s, if you're not part of the solution, you are the problem. and no, and a surgeon who does not solve the problems around them. For me, it took me a little while to learn that. I went to executive education at business school. I didn't get an MBA, but I learned a lot of what you're talking about the team behavior. Anyone else with faculty on something they learned the hard way in their career?
I'll tell you one thing that I've evolved from, maybe learned the hard way. When I came out of residency and training, just answering emails and getting frustrated very quickly. I remember, every email that came my way, I would quickly respond to it. And, sometimes you think, can you guys hear me? My computer's freezing up a little bit.
Yeah.
When I was coming out and I was getting frustrated in the OR or some other issue, I was very quick to fire off emails. And if there was any email that came to me somewhat critical, I'd fire back an email and just stomp up and down and things like that. And I've slowly realized over the years that doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, digs a deeper hole. And get called into the principal's office at least a couple times after you go into practice. So I think, having patience, taking a deep breath, not just reacting quickly to things outside the OR. I'm talking about just in your practice and things like that. I think is a lesson maybe you have to learn the hard way, but if you don't have to, I would encourage you not to learn that the hard way.
Kevin, what do you got?
You called me in tonight, so I didn't think I was going to listen, so I had to give it some thought. I'd like to distinguish between a community hospital job and a university that went in I learned, I was in the 5th year of my practice. I was called at night. I wasn't on call. Please know there was no iPhone. There was no cell phone. You called on a landline and they said to come in. I wasn't on call. And I said, look, I don't want to upset the person on call because in a community hospital, not like a university, that's their bread and butter. I said, listen, I'm not on call. I don't know. We need you to come in. We've called the guy on call. He's not coming in. I said, okay. They came in. I said, what do you have? Because you had to trust an ER doc at those days. I said, I got a non-displaced radial head. I said to myself, that's going to be a sling. I'm not going to do it. He says, I need you to come in. Really important. And what that doctor did for me that day, catapulted part of my career in the community, is I met this man who turned out to be the SEC chairman. And from this day, 25 years later, sent me the wealthiest and the kindest patients because he was going on his private jet in 3 hours to go water skiing, wanted to know if he could do that. It's a different life for him, fine. And I came in and put the sling on his elbow. And he sent me family members and sent me continuous. And I bet many of the faculty will tell the other story that you want to be available. I'm the kind of guy, so Liz knows, that I never say, send it to me tomorrow. I'm coming in. That's my way. I've chosen to do that, but it's worked really well. So it's a lesson that I've learned that I love what I do, but that night, it really did help me.
Any other comments from the faculty on that or any other aspect?
I just make a comment. I mean, the principle is patient first, notwithstanding that you may take care of wealthy people that benefit you, but it's patient first. And so emotions that get in the way of that in terms of interacting with the staff or other things that piss you off, A, it's patient first, and B is don't demonstrate in front of the patient. And I'm chair for quality and safety at MGH in orthopedics. And one of the top 2 problems we have is interpersonal communication and professionalism. And some of the nicest people lose their cool in the face of problems that happen in our operating room, particularly with the wonderful, warm relationship we have with anesthesia. And so, I can tell you personal experience, one lesson I've definitely learned, your initial reaction is not usually the one you should demonstrate. Okay. And there's an expression: revenge is a dish best served cold. Your emotions need to be in check before you respond to something. Filter the way you're going to present that. And one of the best ways to do it, particularly if you're dealing with an individual, is to reverse things and put them in your position and say, how would you feel if you were me and this happened to you? You can't do that when you're pissed off in the moment. And that immediately disarms their fight, if you will. So just think about strategically how you respond to yourself, your own emotions, and others. And frankly, you can use your iWatch, because look at your heart rate. Never respond if your heart rate is more than about 30 or 40% higher than your resting heart rate. Never. Okay.
Great.
I just want to say, I think Dr. Warner really put it well. I think that part of growing up in the job is learning how to address situations when you're under duress in a productive way. And very seldom does it happen when you fight anger or frustration with anger and frustration.
You know, I think that is a great point, and I want to ask each of the faculty how you dealt with various barriers that you might have come across in your careers. You know, I'll start from the bottom up, bottom as in Elizabeth. I'm putting you on the spot. I would apologize, but that's not what I do easily.
No, I think certainly there's been many barriers. And I think sometimes you have to just keep your head high and keep moving forward and just move on. Certain barriers or obstacles maybe not, aren't always worth your time and energy, and others maybe. And you have to, whether it's talking to a mentor, a friend, a colleague, and just figure out the right path forward. I think with regards to barriers or with regards to patient care, no ego amigo. I mean, get help, never go down alone. If you're taking care of a critically ill patient, get people on your team to help care for it with you. If you have a really tough case, I mean, don't be afraid to ask a senior partner or, someone for advice, help, to scrub with you, especially, for our fellows and our young faculty. I mean, I would just say reach out and ask for help.
Okay. Let's move up. Vin, how did you handle some barriers that you got? That could be any kind. Define barrier any way you want to.
I think there's a lot. For me, I think one of the big barriers that I've had, especially being down in the South, it's a different kind of culture down here, and something that I haven't been used to. And it's understanding kind of the rules of the road and how biases and expectations play a role. So down here, it's a very homogenous population, and trying to navigate and understand kind of where I fit at an institution like LSU and in New Orleans and the Gulf South. There aren't too many of me here, and really trying to kind of understand how to be successful in an environment where you're a minority and you don't necessarily fit in. And so that's been a struggle, that's been a barrier, and definitely hit some walls and haven't felt like I fit in many different situations. But you kind of feel like you're on an island sometimes, and so that's been a challenge for me. I don't think I've figured out how to solve that barrier just yet, but it's slowly changing.
Great. Kevin, you're up in the next. Had you hand some barriers? If you want, I'll come back to you.
No.
Okay.
So I still think I still have barriers. So I think they change. They're moving. So specifically, I didn't realize that orthopedics is a small club. And like JP said, you have to play nice in the sand, so that I couldn't understand as a younger man why some of my elders, who in retrospect really deserved it more than me, were in certain positions. And so it was something that I had to grapple with myself. And I think, I started later in life to be a physician. And I looked at my colleagues outside of physicians, and I shouldn't have, because medicine is different. And so I think the barrier is that it takes time. That's why it's a practice, and we learn how to do it better. And I hope that my colleagues see that I'm learning how to do it better, but it takes some, I don't know. You're asking some deep thoughts tonight, Myra. So I'm saying that I can be superficial. It's just ain't me. It takes some time to be accepted with your colleagues, and you need to want to be accepted. And I do want to be accepted, but it takes time to spend with others to really be a part of this orthopedic club.
Great. JP?
So I work in the home of land of barriers. I mean, heaven knows what I'm talking about. And, your decision about your life and what you're going to do has a lot to do with what you'll tolerate. And that's a broader discussion. For me, this is a question of practical barriers and existential barriers. Now, the practical barriers are things that, if we just talk about your career, because there are personal, life, work balance issues, etc. But the practical barriers have to do with the structure of the organization in which you live and the culture in which you live. And it was Donna Shalala, who I met when she was president at UMiami, and had a conversation with her about this. She was, I believe, the only person who was ever head of Health and Human Services for two administrations, one Republican and one Democratic. And she said, it's harder to change the culture of a hospital system than it is to move a graveyard. And so when you show up at a place like Mass General, where I work, or for that matter, Mass General and Brigham, because first they were separate, Mass General Brigham, then they were partners, 1.0, then 2.0, and now MGB, there are barriers baked into that equation that are cultural and structural. And, you may be one individual, you're not Moses, you're not going to change that world. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you realize what you can go around, and most things you can't go through. And that makes you feel a lot more unburdened. So that's just a general comment. But, I'll give you an example. Our hospital, the main operating room is a friggin' catastrophe because of a whole bunch of reasons. Part of it being that we are a Mass General hospital, general, I emphasize general. And consequently, we have all sorts of problems with patient access and managing the operating room and everything else. And I'm a very happy person now, because I moved out of that setting into our new sports medicine center in Waltham. I do almost all my cases, arthroplasty and otherwise, in an outpatient setting where all of the performance metrics are dramatically better. And frankly, by removing myself from that culture, that place, you know what our anesthesiologists call us there, the surgeons? They call us customers. Okay. And they ask us every day, how do we feel? And in fact, we built that facility, and one of the metrics for their bonuses is surgeon satisfaction in addition to patient satisfaction. So look for cultures and structures that are better for you, and don't break your head by banging it against a hard surface, working in a culture that you'll never change. That for me is sort of just a practical example of how I changed the quality of my life, later in my career, when I was struggling with that for many, many years.
Great. Selene?
I think one of the barriers that probably every single one of us on this call, at least faculty-wise, the ones who I know, have been pioneers in our own right. Whether you pioneered because you developed new technologies, or you pioneered training and educating, or whatever it is. And when you're a pioneer, you tend to ruffle feathers, right? You tend to ruffle the establishment. And that can be a lonely place. And that's a barrier because you're trying to be part of a community, yet you're trying to push the envelope, whether it's for patient care or for training, educating, or whatever it may be. And I think you have to understand who you are. You have to be comfortable in your own skin. And it takes a while to do that. Especially early in your career when you hit some of these barriers and you hear people say certain things about you, and I think that's tough. But it gives you the mental toughness as you mature or later in your career to take that on and realize that, hey, what I think I'm doing for whatever reason is the right thing, and I can move forward with it. So I think that's important. And there's a saying that if you're doing something meaningful and you're doing something that's going to change the world, you're going to piss people off, and that's okay. You got to be okay with that, and do what you think's right.
Bruce?
Thanks, Ira.
Or should I say Dr. Gomberg, sir?
All great points. I have.
It's actually Moses.
The early barrier was at 5'4" being on Harry Rubash's service, which was difficult because I had to lug 3 or 4 step stools around the OR. That was difficult and a barrier which I'm still working through with my therapist. But the other thing, and I think it was kind of mentioned earlier, is navigating, especially the healthcare system, in which physicians aren't necessarily the people in charge. And so dealing with hospital administration and learning how to talk their language and dealing with people who aren't really on the front lines of patient care is a very difficult kind of position to be put in. We don't get a lot of training, and it takes a long time to kind of overcome that division of labor.
Interesting. So I'm going to chip in and be a participant for a second and talk about a couple of barriers. Somewhere around 1991, I had an idea, and I think Selene, talked about this idea. If you're going to innovate something, I didn't think of it as innovation, but I had an idea that there was this new concept called the World Wide Web, which I was on since 1988 from the people from the well. And I had this idea that there should be an orthopedic community on the web. And so I developed it with a friend of mine. We coded it ourselves in HTML, and we formed a website called Bone Home. It was an orthopedic site, Bone Home, and I got a lot of flack from a lot of people in the academy who did not think we were going to be learning this way. We presented Bone Home, and then a group of venture capital people came up to me and said, "We'd like you to join us." And that was a group that started Medscape. So we took the Medscape idea, and I actually had a meeting with the board of counselors of the AMA. And George Lundberg, who was the editor-in-chief of JAMA, was presiding over the meeting. And after I presented this concept of this thing, George Lundberg said to me, "You should go back to the practice of orthopedics. No one is ever going to want to communicate on this medium." Okay. Fast forward, we took Medscape public a little bit later, and the first editor we hired was George Lundberg, and I was on the group that he had to meet on the first day, and he remembered me, and he graciously said, for a second, "I remember you. I have to say I was wrong." But those 5 years of going uphill and trying to introduce people to this, as Selene said, was somewhat difficult. Unfortunately, also at the same time, my mentor was Dick Rothman. I was a Rothman fellow when Dick was 53, Bob Booth was 46, and Bill Hozak was still in diapers. And I'd say that they were my mentors, but they offered me the chief of joint replacement at Jefferson. I must have had a lobotomy and I turned it down. And I went into practice in New York, where the people I joined sued each other 2 months before I got there. So I had no job when I came to New York. So I joined Kaiser Permanente, which I was the only, in this particular Kaiser, I was the only joint surgeon, and there were two big groups in town that were joint replacement surgeons. And boy, did they go after me on every single case. And another mentor of mine, Chet Ronalot, pulled me aside and said, quality will always win. Just keep on doing good cases, keep on treating your patients well, keep on being available, as Kevin pointed out. And it turned out that in the end, both of those groups ended up being taken over by the hospital. I wasn't. And then I left that hospital to go to Bronx Care, really followed my heart. And my last year, I did 480 joints, starting with one when I first started there. But that was quite a barrier with somewhat negative, quotes, colleagues in town. And that was a very hard sea to navigate. All right. But the innovation was also a hard sea to navigate for a while. I'm just waiting for some of the big journals to come after me at Joey. So it's not over, it continues.
They'll buy you out, baby.
for nickels on the dollar. So I just want to show one thing, and I apologize for taking up everyone's time on this. I'm going to show my screen for a second, because I am going to say that our advertiser who made this possible tonight is Pacera. I'm sorry to be so commercial about it, but they were very generous in supporting this entire resident fellow program on Joey. And I just want to take a moment to thank them for that, because we wouldn't be able to use no open access without some advertisers who see the vision of what we're all trying to do. And all the people on this panel tonight are tremendous innovators in what they have done. I'm very pleased that they came on board. So we have about 10 minutes left. Maybe we can go around and see if we have any other advice for all these young and exciting residents, fellows, and medical students. Kevin?
No, I recognize about 3 or 4 of these young people, and they're like superstars. I know some of them. So I didn't know if you ever allowed them to ask a pointed question to you.
Yeah, let's do that. Yes. I apologize for not doing that. If anyone has any questions, you could either put it in the chat or just start talking, and you'll pop up on the screen. I could put some of you on the spot because I know a few of you.
So do I.
Well, think of something you want to ask and put it in the chat, and then we'll call on you, and we'll do that. All right. So what are some other things that I thought of in barriers was that it took me a while to figure out I couldn't fix everything myself. That I needed to delegate certain things, and I need to find the right people around me. What's the line? If you're in a room and you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. So maybe we could talk. JP?
Can I say something about that?
Yeah, please.
For those who are interested, I just did a talk on innovation and innovators and barriers to innovation that will be posted to ViewMedi shortly. And it speaks to the issue you raise. There's something called the Medici effect, which was, many of you may know that in Italy, when they brought together all of these talented people to cross-fertilize one another and create ideas and etc. That happens in innovation. And I've been part of that at least once, maybe once and a half times with a startup company. And that can also happen in the way you do business in your work. It fits with one of my highlights of my career has been having the right partners. First it was Peter Millett, then it was Larry Higgins, now it's Bassem El-Hassan. These people, it's more than additive, it's multiplicative when you're with people like this. And they hold you accountable, they fuel your ideas, they work with you on creativity. Creativity comes from a place that's not so analytical. And so having the opportunity or potential to find people that want to share a direction with you is a wonderful thing. And I used to say that, I found that when I'm in the operating room in the main hospital, I feel like I'm in a circular rowboat. Everybody's got oars in the water and you know where we're going. But when you work with a group that is trying to create value through an innovation, everybody's aligned, everybody's rowing in the same direction. We know the destination, and there's a magical thing that happens in terms of complementing one another and facilitating, what we're trying to accomplish. That is a magical feeling. And if you're lucky enough to come across that, you'll know what I mean when you do, and you'll remember this conversation.
There's a question, Jonathan Light. Jonathan, you want to ask your question yourself?
Yes, sir. Thank you, everyone, for welcoming medical students. And Dr. Warner, you mentioned that professionalism is super important, and something I presented at OSET Boston in terms of social media and professionalism in the orthopedic residency selection process. And so the question I had is specifically, what innovations have you discovered or unraveled in terms of teaching professionalism at your institution, and how have they helped or not helped?
So it's interesting. In large organizations, there's the culture that you get in the org chart, and then there's the social culture. And the social culture is, if you look at how people connect with one another, imagine each person's a dot, and there are arrows pointing in and out from that dot. Ask yourself if the leader of your organization has a lot of arrows pointing in or pointing out. And what you often find is that the people with influence, not title, are the ones where all the arrows are pointing in and arrows are going out, and the leader's over here with few arrows either way. That is a incredibly valuable position to be in, and part of that is the professionalism of how you advise people. So that's part of it. The other part of it is, throughout my career, I've had the good fortune to be involved with coaches, people that coach you and how you deal with other people, and you learn from them how to be a better coach yourself. The next Codman Shoulder Society meeting in San Diego is going to have part of it is going to be about professionalism and personal development with an organization named J3P Healthcare Solutions, which works with the AAOS and the American Shoulder Elbow Surgeons and et cetera, and specifically focused on surgeons, because we're unique, we're different than medical people per se. And so somewhere in there is the question of professionalism. I think first and foremost, you have to be transparent, and you have to have principles that transcend what your inclinations might be. So we just talked about moderating your own reactions and this sort of a thing. That's sort of professionalism. I don't want to I'll get lost in that topic, but everybody kicks that around in different ways. And I think it's really, really helpful, valuable in your career to have the opportunity to have a coach, the way that athletes have a coach, the way that speakers have a coach, etc.
We have a question. That's great. Thank you, JP. Lauren Holiday, you want to put on your video and ask your question?
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren. I'm at TCU in Fort Worth. Brutal loss last weekend, but my question was mainly geared towards Dr. Matzkin, but anyone can feel free to jump in and answer from what they've seen. But I just wanted to know how you've seen the culture change with the increase in females in surgery in general, but also specifically in orthopedics. And if you think that there are any barriers that might still remain, or many that you have actually seen improve over the years. I would just love to get your perspective on it. Thanks.
Yeah, I think certainly the times have changed. I don't consider myself super old, but I was the first female resident in my program and the first female fellow. in my program, and I feel like that those firsts are done with. And there's certainly we have about almost 7% of practicing female orthopedic surgeons right now, but residents are now pushing 12%. So we're seeing that number grow. I think some of the biggest changes have, just been, I mean, obviously we're much more aware about being diverse and inclusive, but now, maternity and paternity policies have changed dramatically. When I trained, there were ACGME rules, and if you took more than 3 weeks off of your residency per year, you repeated a year, period. Didn't matter what it was for. So, I mean, it's an amazing time to be an orthopedic surgeon, no matter who you are or where you come from. It's such a great specialty. I mean, there's always room for improvement. I mean, I don't think things are perfect, but I certainly look at it as the glass is half full, and you have a lot to look forward to.
Great.
Thanks.
And Lauren, let me just share a story because Elizabeth, you're right, it's changed a lot, but I'll give you a story. My personal story, I was a medical student at a very highly esteemed institution, and I won't name any names, but one of the marquee professors there sat me down as a medical student, went through my record and said, it's a good thing you don't have a Muslim name. And I said, excuse me? He said, yeah, because if you did, you probably wouldn't get any interviews. But with your color, you're probably not going to get any interviews in the South. And he was blatant about it. Now, it astonished me that somebody of his reputation could say that to me. But he was right. I didn't get any interviews in the South. And now it's changed. And diversity, equity, inclusion is transformed what's happened in my 17 years. And I think it's going to just continue to change. And it's fantastic to see it and be part of it.
Good question. I'm going to go around and just ask for a few final comments from the faculty. I'll start with Bruce. We'll go from my view, left to right.
Thanks, Ira. It's a pleasure to be here. I really want to thank everybody for coming, and certainly I'm honored, Ira, to share the stage with the people that you brought in. I think that everybody agrees orthopedics is the best possible field in medicine and the only one where we truly fix people. We are happy because we really fix people. And to be around happy people is an amazing thing.
All right, Selene?
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think this has been a fantastic hour. I think everybody should try to find balance in their life. I think that's where you get happiness. Obviously, we get happiness in our careers, but I think balance is really important professionally, familial, and in your extracurricular activities. And don't forget to kind of develop other parts of your life as you move on, because they become increasingly important as life goes on. Thanks.
JP?
So I'll be brief. I'll give you 2 books that you should read. One I gave all my kids. It's written by a guy named Clayton Christensen, who was a esteemed professor at Harvard Business School and sadly passed away before his time. It's a small book. It's called How Will You Measure Your Life? There's also a TED Talk by him. If you don't want to read the book, it's 19 minutes long. I think it has the answers to your question. The other one that I would recommend is written by Bill George. Bill George was the CEO of Medtronic and taught a leadership program at Harvard Business School, and it's entitled True North. So finding something that really is your true north, your direction, the thing that defines you, is everything else falls in line after that. And that's a whole lifetime for some people to find that. Those 2 books, if you read them, will probably be a good way to navigate your future careers.
All right. And Elizabeth?
I would say master the small tasks first, and the bigger things will fall into place, whether that's with bigger cases or bigger leadership positions. But be so good at the small things first, and everything's going to follow.
So I want to say thank you. Oh, hello? Did I miss someone? Oh, there's Kevin. God, I thought you disappeared. There you go. Kevin, gotcha.
I'm so excited to meet all of you. I put my phone number up there because, you know, I want you to know that we all should be accessible to each other because you are the future. And I'm excited. I think you need to be a servant leader. I'll give you a book that's different because JP gave you great books. Read a book called Heart Sounds. Teaches you how to be the patient when you're the doctor, about someone who unfortunately had a mishap and had to be that patient. And then I would probably tell you to see a TED Talk that's about the why in life. So you figure it out. Simon Sinek, Sinek. I think those two things for me were instrumental, and I look forward. Stop me in a hallway. Anyway, I'd love to meet all of you. I'm excited. Thanks, Art.
So I'm going to say a few final comments. It's great to see some of my old summer fellows on the screen who are all going into orthopedics, and I want to say thank you to a tremendous faculty. I don't have any books for you to read because, you know, when to hide something from an orthopedic surgeon, you put it in a book, right? But I will give you a song that you should listen to quite a bit, and that's The Pretender by Jackson Browne. In life, you shouldn't be a pretender. You should be the real thing and follow your heart, and don't always listen to what other people tell you, but you know, you've really have an opportunity here and you have access to such great minds tonight. I want to thank Kevin, JP, Elizabeth, Vin, Selene, and Bruce for being here. I know you guys are very busy, and it's been an absolute pleasure. So with that said, we'll sign off because we like to not keep people longer. This will be on Joey recorded and played in 42nd Street on the Grand Marquis in Times Square. And I'd like to say good night to everybody. Thank you.
Ira, thanks everyone.
Thanks. Good night.
Thanks, Ira.
Thank you.
Thank you.